There we go. Okay. Should be. Oh, it's streaming live on Facebook. How are you, Diana?
Good. How are you,
I'm
Sandy?
good. Okay, let me shut this one down so we don't get an echo here.
Okay. So today
There we go.
we are on the flip side and we are going to be doing Q&A.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be fun to always answer questions that people have because I know lots of people always have, questions that either they're worried that they're dumb questions or they just don't know who to ask. So
Yeah,
we can always point them in the right direction. If we
yeah,
can't answer them, at least we can definitely tell them who to talk to.
for sure. And sometimes we don't, we underestimate that we know things that we think everybody knows, and they don't necessarily, right? So we kind of gloss over it. And so I think that's important, that if you have a question, feel free to ask it, because we don't always realize that people don't know certain
Yeah.
things.
When it's also when you're a beginner, you have so many questions, but when you've done it for so long, I feel like you forget all the beginner things that happened to you
Yeah,
until someone asks and you're like, oh yeah, I used
that's
to
so
go through
true.
that too, right?
Yeah,
I noticed those things happen to me. People ask me, I'm like, oh yeah, I just like, to me, it becomes second nature to me
yeah.
that
You
it's
take it
like I
for
don't
granted,
even
right? Yeah.
remember. Yeah, you don't remember the problems that you used to go through back then.
Yeah. You know what? I hired a financial literacy coach a couple of years ago to teach me financial literacy, because I felt like I didn't know a lot of stuff. And some of, like, a couple of things that he taught me were really basic, but I didn't understand it. And the first one was that he said, how would you know this stuff? And
Hmm.
like, how would you know how to be financial literate? So his first question in one of our first lessons was, could you do brain surgery if you had to? And I said, well, of course not. And he said, why? And I said, well, because no one's ever taught me that. And he said, then how would you expect to be financially literate? Like, if no one's taught it to you, how do you expect to know it? So that was a big eye opener for me. And the second one was just how much I actually know that I assume that everybody else already knows, and they don't. So those two things were big eye openers for me. So you're right about that.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because also, at least my understanding of things, I mean, I'm very good when it comes to math, but so it wasn't so big for me, but I can say that I also thought, for example, oh, if I know math, that means I'm financially
Right,
literate, and it's not at all. Like you can know
right.
the basics of math, but you still need to actually go and understand the financial part, like how are you impacted financially is two
Yeah,
different things. So that was
yeah,
something that I also realized. I was like, oh, I'm so good at math, this is so easy for me. And yeah, it is easy for me to learn the financial literacy part. It is easy for me to learn it, but
yeah,
didn't mean I knew it. Like I still needed to learn it.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. They're two totally different things, right? I mean, it probably makes it easier if you have some math background to get the financial literacy part of it. I don't even know if that's true, but you're right. Just because you're good at math doesn't mean you're
Doesn't mean.
financially literate. It is a skill. It is a skill that needs to be taught, for sure. So yeah, and I think you had some questions from some people who were interested in today's Q&A day, and yeah, so it's great. But anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And even if you're watching this on replay, we're happy to add them into another session and talk about them. And like our page here and follow us. And then you'll see us live every Tuesday at 1. I was running a little bit late because I am actually a working realtor as well. So I did have an appointment which ran a little bit over. And yeah, so it's good. Okay, let's go.
That's
Let's
okay. We
go.
forgive you because who's going to stop you from making money?
Yes, exactly. And then Thursday we have our networking, investor networking group. And I want to talk about before we sign off, something exciting that I have coming up as well. So maybe you can tell people
Oh,
a little bit about the event coming up on Thursday.
yeah, sounds good. And then we can talk about yours because I haven't heard about it, so
Okay.
I don't mind hearing. Or maybe I have. If you posted about it, then maybe I know which one you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of did. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I know which one you're talking about.
Okay.
But yeah, for sure we'll talk about it. So since we're talking about financial literacy and you're talking about that you had a coach, let's talk about that because there are questions related like that to financing. Um, for example, this question, curious about turning my house into a real estate property and hoping to learn and gain insight into the real estate investing and partnership. And they're specifically talking in the sense of just understanding the finance part. So maybe we should talk about like what were your main maybe two or three things that you learned from your coach that you found to be pivotal or important.
The major one was how to evaluate opportunity, because that's the biggest, I think that's your biggest, the biggest drawback, right? You need to be able to evaluate the opportunity in front of you. So in this case, the person owns a property. I'm assuming it's their principal residence. Is that right?
It looks like they have a principal residence and they're wanting to, I guess, convert it to a rental property.
Okay. So yeah, so you want to evaluate that opportunity. Now, so I guess you'd have to look at, there's no right or wrong answer to any of these questions, obviously. It's all about your own personal situation and how do I evaluate this to see which way to go with this? Is it better for me to, let's say, turn this into a rental property, and can you easily do that? Are you going to rent it out as a single family home? Do you have 2 units? Those are the type of things that you have to understand. How much does it cost you to carry the property? By carrying the
Hmm.
property, I'm talking about your principal and interest if you have a mortgage, your taxes, principal, interest, and taxes. And then also, if you're going to rent it out, then chances are you're going to have, the tenant's going to pay for the utilities. So that will be a wash. But you do need to be putting money aside for maintenance because things will come up. So what's the age of the house? What are you expecting the maintenance to be going forward? How close are you going to live to the house moving when you do decide to move, and how long do you want to keep it? So I think one of the biggest things that people have to take into consideration today, if you're going to be buying properties and holding them and renting them out, is the rental laws. I mean, they're very strict and they're very highly favored in terms of the tenant. So if you're planning to have that property and maybe keeping it for a year and then selling it, then you've got to evaluate that, because if you have a tenant in there and you want the tenant to leave, you can't ask them to move because you're selling. You can only ask them to move for 3 reasons. One is that they're not paying rent. One is that they're damaging the property. And one is that you or an immediate family member are moving in. So even if it's an immediate family member moving in, you still have to honor that lease. And then you have to pay them a month's rent when they leave. So if they've paid first and last month's rent, last month they don't, so second last month they don't pay, then you have to pay them a month's rent to get them to leave. So evaluate how long you're going to keep the property. And I still think there's value in renting properties and holding them for a long number of years. There's nothing wrong with that. What's your return on investment going to be? And then where can you go? So are you going to refinance the property and take some equity out and buy another property? Those are all the things that you need to look at, and just evaluate the opportunity and where you're going to go from there.
Yeah, and seeing what the options are, like you were saying, doing a property analysis on your property is a good thing to do. And it's actually easier, I feel like, because when you're analyzing to rent and you already live there, you already know what your expenses are. So you can look back 6 months and do an average, or even look back throughout the year and be like, how are my expenses during the winter? How are they during the summer?
Yeah,
What do I want to average that out to be? What are the, and then now that you know your expenses, then you're going to the market. Okay, what does the market do rents at? Am I covering all my expenses? Am I at least, breaking even or not? Is it worth it to sell instead and get a different type of property like that? Like maybe it's a single family home and you're like, you know what, I'd make more money with a duplex at the same price.
right.
um so, because that happened to me. So when I bought my first home, it was a townhouse, and so single family home. I wouldn't be able to do anything much more than that. I actually did rent it out for some time, But once I started getting into the business side of things, where I'm like, I need to start treating my properties as a business. And obviously at that time, obviously I left that house, so it was being rented out. But and changing your mind about things is telling yourself it's okay, because I had like that was supposed to be my little retirement property. Like I was supposed to keep it for until I retired. And I was
Yeah.
planning, my plan was like every house I keep, I mean every house I buy, I'm always going to keep it. But once I started starting to look at my real estate like a business, I realized that actually the best option for me was to sell.
Yeah.
And um and it became actually it was an amazing decision for me, because from selling that property, I was able to do I was able to, first of all, that property wasn't cash flowing.
Right.
I was actually having to put $50 in a month to not break even, but I mean to cover all the
Cover.
expenses.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so the house wasn't actually even breaking even. And um and what happened afterwards, once I sold it, I did a private lend. So I was already making a lot of money from that, and I bought another house. So it was actually very interesting, because then once I mean, this is, and not for everyone to think that this is like happens all the time. From that one house that I got, I mean, so I have one private lend going on, and I bought a triplex. And so I was from both of them. So for 6 months, both of them together, I was cash flowing actually $3,000 a month from both of them. Now, obviously, that private lend is done. So I'm doing other private lends. They're probably around. I'm probably making maybe 1,000 a month. I don't know, on the private lend for that one maybe, but just imagine I went from minus 50 to three thousand
Right.
dollars a month in cash flow, and it was just
Yeah.
because mindset shifted. I was just like, you know what, this is not a good business decision for myself. I need to start finding things that will have cash flow. And and then those two deals happened to come. Like I found a triplex where it was cash flowing like crazy. We obviously bought it at a substantial discount because it was a disaster. Like it needed a
Yeah.
lot. Like we put in a lot of money into it. But um, like that, like after all expenses, like again, I think that's not that common to even be able to have a triplex cash flowing at 2,000 a month.
Yeah.
I don't think that's very normal. And you
Yeah.
probably, if you have maybe a fourplex or a fiveplex, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so that was, good. And then like that, like not only I had money for the down payment, the renovations. Not only that, I had money left over to still private lend the other money out. So like I was laughing afterwards. I was like, this is the best decision I've ever made for
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah. But I think the difference is you like evaluated the opportunity and the opportunity came up, so you do it. If you go looking for those deals, a lot of times you're not going to find them.
And
That's why
I knew
you should
what my
probably
goals
always,
were.
yeah, you should probably always have some liquid cash. So when deals like that come up, you can take advantage of them, because as soon as you start looking for them, then it becomes harder, right? Like I realized that a few years ago that in order to have a good flip business, to me, you need to have some properties in your inventory, right? So
Mhm.
if you
Yeah.
own 3 or 4 properties, right, and then
Mhm.
you flip one and you sell it, if you're doing that and you're like, let's say the first one you buy, you flip it, you sell it, now you're looking for another one, you're at the mercy of the market at that time. So
Mhm.
now you may be in a fast market, whereas if you buy properties, you hold them and you're renting them out and they're cash flowing, and then you renovate them and sell one, and you have another one as backup, and the market is a really crazy hot market, you can flip one, you can reno one of those other properties that you bought some time ago and sell it at that point, and that's where the leverage comes in, as it sat on the market, it's built up some more equity, that kind of thing. So I think those things are really important, because if you're just going from one house to the next house to the next house, you're at the market, you're at the mercy of, number one, having to buy in a very fast market, but also having to sell in a down market, right? And the market changes so quick that you're kind of, so you've always got to have a backup plan. You should always, that was another thing that I learned, like, what's your backup plan? What's your plan B? So you buy this
Yeah.
property, what's your plan B? But it should always be stuff that there were so many things I learned, stuff that you understand, right? I don't understand the stock market very well, so I don't get involved in the stock market. I understand real estate. I'm very comfortable with real estate. It makes much more sense to me. I can evaluate that a little easier than stocks. So that was a really
Mhm.
important one. So I think just, yeah, so in this
And
person's
having
case,
your goal, because when you have your
yeah,
goal, I think it's very easy. I mean, it's easy for you to evaluate the properties. Because, for example, like one of my goals was also with this specific one, why it went so well was that one of my goals was it needed to be 100% BRR. Like, because again, I'm running a business, I need to be able to take out all that money to put it into another property and
yeah,
continue the process. That being said, it took me time to find that house. But one of the things, networking is very important, right? Like meeting a lot of people. I mean, it does, again, I was doing it for a business purpose, so I'm putting in a lot more time
yeah,
because like that, like I was networking, meeting lots of people and trying to get to know what's going on. And that's another reason why I get into private lending, right? Because there's other people that find amazing deals like I found, right? But
right,
you're not always able to find so amazing deals all the time. But I was just like, I want to be a part of it. So I
yeah,
was just like, okay, well, the next option is private lend. I was like, if I find amazing deals where I know we're all winning, I was like, why am I not going to lend to that person? Like, don't get me wrong, he's going to be making a lot more profits than I am. But the fact that I could be involved in
yeah,
it, I mean, I'm still winning in that sense, right? I may not get
sure.
the amazing profits that he gets, but I'm at least, being involved in a project that I wanted to be a part of.
For sure. And it all comes back to you. It all comes back to you at the end anyway. At some point it comes back to you. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, right? But because you can't
Mhm.
buy every property. I mean, as much as you'd love to, you can't buy
Exactly.
every property. So if you can still be involved in it, but not have to be the one, buying it and doing the renos, that's a good thing, I think. So yeah. So
Exactly. And that
evaluate.
was my thing too. I was just like, exactly. Like my husband can't do every single house. He doesn't have enough bandwidth. So I
Sure.
was just like, but I had money available, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, I need to put my money to work. So I was like, the next best thing is I can private lend it out to projects. And because I come with the background of like knowing renovations and stuff because of my husband, I'm pretty decent
Yeah.
at being able to quote. Like if I could easily, like if someone would bring me a project and they're like, oh yeah, I can get these renovations done with 50K, I can look at it and be like, yeah,
You'll
that sounds
know.
reasonable. Or
Yeah.
no, you're smoking, I don't know what, because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it helps be really well-rounded like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any
what else?
other financial tips that you would want to give?
In what scope?
Just like I was just thinking of what you learned from your mentor. Like, I think, like you said, like not everything is. We think things are common knowledge, but they're not.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
what tips did you learn that in that not even having to be real estate? Because I feel like even before real estate, you do have to get your finances kind of in order, right? Or understood or whatever.
Yeah, just trying to think on that one. So I think that one, yeah, just knowing your numbers, knowing your budgets, and being able to budget, like what are your non-essentials that you have to have every month? What is that amount? What is that amount of money that you need to make every month? And then if you want to buy something, if you want to buy like a big ticket item, instead of taking cash out of what you have, if you take that cash, invest it, and then you're able to pay with that on what you're buying, is a better option than just taking the cash and paying cash for something. At what point is it better to pay cash for it, well, this brings up another one. At what point is it better to pay cash for it, or is it better to invest that money and then pay for that product with what you're bringing in from that investment,
Yeah, I
right?
think that's another good one actually to talk about. Debt specifically. People
Yeah,
are very scared of debt,
yeah, and I think it
and
depends on the debt, right? Like if you own a property and you have a lot of equity in that property and you take out a line of credit on it, which is, let's say right now is prime minus 0.5. So if you're paying even if we call it 2.5% interest on that money, you take $100,000, you're paying 2.5% interest, and you can invest that money at 10% interest, you're 8% ahead of, you're 7.5% ahead of the game. So it makes a lot of sense to do that, where a lot of people get fearful of that because they're afraid that, I'm getting
They're
into
more
debt.
scared of the debt part for some
Right. But
reason
that's good debt. There's
instead of
nothing wrong with that.
realizing.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's an investment. So let's say
yeah.
you wanted to buy a car. If you wanted to buy a car, for argument's sake, let's say a $70,000 car, and you're going to finance it, why not take it out of your property, invest that money, and then pay with the money that you're bringing in, right?
Mhm.
As opposed to just financing it. The other, there was another interesting thing. Here's a good question that I think would be really helpful. Do you pay off debt, or do you put the money into your savings if you have a lot of debt?
Depends on the debt. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, if you're cash flowing, I wouldn't pay off. I would just, I mean, pay off whatever the mortgage is,
yeah.
like that you're supposed to pay. But I don't think I would pay more than needed if I'm cash flowing.
Okay, but what if you, but let's talk about different debt. So let's say you have credit card debt. Let's say you have debt, like let's say unsecured debt of $20,000, and you're bringing in, you're working, whatever, you have a paycheck coming in or you're working. What do you do first? Do you put money in your savings, or do you pay off that debt?
Oh no,
That's a good question, I think.
yeah, yeah, you'd pay off the debt for sure.
Well,
Because your savings is like what, 1%? Your debt, if you're a
right.
credit card, is like 20%.
Yeah, so I think that's where evaluating opportunity comes in, right? Because that the answer to that question is, I don't think, the same for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So
And
yes,
for
if you have credit
example,
card debt, so look at your
mhm,
credit card debt and what are you paying interest on? If you're paying interest, if your interest is 20% on that debt, then you might be better off paying off debt. Here's where kind of we'll throw a wrench into it. When you're looking like financing something, so from the bank's perspective, right? A bank, you need to have some type of debt and you need to show that you pay that debt, right? And
mhm,
if you don't have any savings, the bank is less likely to lend you money. They'll lend you money if you have debt, but they may not lend you money if you have no savings. So that's where everybody's situation is totally different. I would
mhm,
say, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I would say if you don't have any plans to need financing for some reason in the next, let's say, year or in the near future, then pay off that credit card debt as fast as you can and don't worry about the savings. But if you're
yeah,
building a business or you're doing something that you're going to need financing, then you might want to do a little bit of
yeah,
both. You might want to pay off some of the debt and put some money into savings because you need to prove that you have savings. So
mhm,
everybody's situation is totally different. That's where
yeah, that's
that's
true.
where
And you
evaluating
always,
the opportunity comes in.
yeah, and always like, for example, in something like that, an accountant would probably be really helpful because you tell them the full situation,
Yeah,
and they can really guide you. Because even something, for example, that I did, not for debt, more for investment purpose, but I think but you can also use it. It's meant for debt actually. So what happened is, especially, I don't know if a lot of people have noticed, but nowadays a lot of credit cards are doing, 1 to 3% balance transfer, upfront fee of 1% for a
yeah,
balance transfer, and you don't pay any interest for like 12 months. So I've been actually taking out that money. But for me, it's been for business purpose. So I take it out and I invest it.
yeah,
But if you're, for example, going between a credit card that's 20% to going down to 3%, same thing, like you said, like that's at least a way to buy you at least 12 months to strategize and figure out what you're going to do
yeah,
and not use that money, for example. So always trying to keep your options open, I think, is very important also, and trying to see what are all the different possibilities. Because, for example, I don't know if people always think of, let's say, a balance transfer as something to use either for business or to pay off the debt. I'm not sure.
yeah,
But if they don't, I think that's another option, right? That you can take, you kind of move your credit around, which, like you said, at least you're not dipping into your savings account. Because, like that, if you do plan, it's very true, especially if you're going to a second home or multiple homes, they always want you to have a slush fund there.
yeah.
So if you don't want to dip into that slush fund, then, being strategic about how you deal with your debt is also helpful too, or even putting it, some people put it on their mortgage, but having a plan, obviously, because I mean, if you're in debt for consumer debt, you do still need to have a plan because
Yeah.
um,
And you want
that's
to get that
just like
consumer
spending money that
debt
you don't
down.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At the end of the
yeah,
day, you want to get that consumer debt down. That's important, right? So
yeah,
I think that's really important, having a plan to pay off that consumer debt.
Yeah, because or else that continues to grow, and then you're
That's
just
right.
digging your hole. That's different.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Okay, so there's, oh, I just passed a question. What was the question? Oh, one of the questions was about risk. Um, what do you do to alleviate your feelings and stress about risk when you're going to buy a property?
Well, I think for that, there's different types of risk, right? So you got to look at what are you risking? Like people aren't so afraid of the let me, how do I say this? So how do you protect, what you want to know is how do you protect your initial investment, right? And how do you protect your return on investment? They're two different things, right? So let's say you buy a house for 600,000, right? And you think you're going to make $100,000 on that property. So you do all your math, you do everything, and you figure by the time I'm done, I'm going to make $100,000 here. How do you protect that 100,000 so that you make 100,000? And how do you protect the 600,000 so you're not at a loss on that end? Just, do you know what I mean? They're two different
Mm-hmm.
things, right? So you want to learn how to not only protect your investment, but how to protect your return on that investment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
And
yeah,
for that, I feel like analyzing, understanding your risk levels and your risk tolerance is important too, because it'll help you figure out in what direction to go,
right,
right? Because I feel for it, because I know this is something, especially in like mutual funds and stocks, they do this. You have to do a risk assessment.
right,
We should do risk assessments even for properties, right? Because
yeah,
I mean, if you're going to treat it as a business or invest in it, understanding your risk tolerance is very important because some people may be like, woohoo, let's do a flip. It's a lot of
yeah,
fun, you know? And
yes,
others are like, are you crazy? Let
yeah.
me just buy a house that I can rent out.
Right, right. Yeah. And it all comes down to your level of comfort, but I think it's important that you evaluate both. You evaluate,
Yeah.
because most people are not afraid that they're going to lose the initial investment, but they don't know how to protect what their return is supposed to be. And there's a lot of different things, right? Like
For
a
the
project,
unknown.
but a project turning into a 6-month project as opposed to a 3-month project, you're there's your capital, right? Or there's your profit. It's eating into your profit when that kind of starts to happen, right?
Yeah.
Or not properly understanding the cost of material. Because when you figure your material is going to be 50,000, your material is 60,000, well, that's $10,000 into your profit that you've now lost. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different ways, right? I think one of the biggest things that I see happen is people will buy a property that's in an area, an up and coming area, let's say, which I think is a great idea to do, but then they renovate that property, but they renovate it to the level of the area, right?
Mhm.
So if you're in an up and coming area in transition, you may not necessarily need to use the same finishes that you would use in another area. So don't over improve it, because, and by over improve it, every property is different. So in one area, like putting granite or quartz countertops, you don't need to do that. You're going to get the same return. You're not getting any more money when you do things like that. So evaluating that kind of thing, that's where having a good team around you comes into play, like a good realtor that knows the area, that can tell you, like, yeah, you got to go a little bit more high end in this area. You don't have to go as high end in this area. Those kind of things make a big difference.
Or even especially, I think having a mentor, because also helps because it's very true. A lot of people also get very emotionally involved
Right.
with their house, especially when it's their first or second or first, maybe not first primary, but first, rental or first
Yeah.
investment property. They get very emotionally invested, and when you get emotionally invested, that's not
You're
the
not making,
best
yeah,
thing
you're not making
because
rational decisions. That's right.
yeah, you're thinking more about what you would want in a house
Yeah.
instead of thinking, what does this community need? What do I need to do for this community? And maybe your standards are very different to what it is there,
Yeah.
right? And then and then so you over improve and you're losing on money that, or for example, some people like to um do like these crazy, accent walls, and then you're like, you've just cut your niche in half because
Right.
now not everyone's gonna like that crazy accent wall. And it's like that's why a lot of us go plain, right? Like we do the generic
Yeah.
because we know everyone's gonna want to, whoever buys is gonna want to put their touch in there.
Right. Right. Right.
Leave it
Yes.
generic enough that they can put their own accent wall, for example, if they want, or
Yeah.
add what they want to put their touch in, because everyone's so different. So you want to keep it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just so many things to think about.
Yeah. Perfect. So you know what? We're gonna have to
Oh,
cut it off now, but these are some great questions. I want to continue with these on maybe on the when our next Q&A, but some of these questions are really great. Talk
mhm.
about our
Networking
the
event.
networking event coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, our networking event is this Thursday. So quickly get into my bio. I don't know if Sandy has it in her bio, but it's in mine for sure.
I'll have to add
So you
it
can
there.
buy a ticket. And when you buy one ticket, you
Okay, I don't know if it's me that's
get three
frozen.
free. You'll get to go to four in total for networking.
Okay.
Oh, is it? I hope you guys can hear me. But
Yeah, it's good now.
it's going to be about commercial and residential real estate. This is this month's topic, and so we'll have a lawyer in to talk about that, and then after that, we're gonna all get to network one on one with each other. 5 minutes. So it'll be something like a speed dating, except for business, and you get to meet people, network with people, get to know people, which is again very important, especially if you want to get into investing. You'll get to learn a lot of strategies, how different people work, and it's Thursday. It's from 7 to 9.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly tell you about what I'm doing. So what I found out is a really hot topic right now is making money with pre-construction. So I'm putting together a training session on how to make money with pre-construction that we'll talk about a little bit later, really early in the planning process at this point, but I'll keep everybody up to date on that, which I think would be great. And still lots of opportunity in the pre-construction business for sure in a lot of different areas, and that's kind of what we'll cover. So I'll give more information on that as that comes up. So what I'd like to say is we're gonna have to wrap this up. So if you have any questions, type them in the chat here. We can address them on the next one, or send them DM Diana or myself, and we can make sure we get those questions addressed for you. And also like this page and share it if you think it was valuable. If you have any questions, you want to get information on investment properties, send me a DM. I'm happy to get you information on investment properties, on the market, off market, a lot of different opportunities that come up for sure. And Diana's always happy to answer any questions and network with investors, teach them her tips and tricks, and we go and good. It's a great business to get into, I think. So I totally went off topic there, but yeah, I think it's a great business to get into, and you're always so helpful with everybody, which is great. Because I think we
Okay.
both understand when you help other people, you learn yourself, right?
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. We're all learning from each other, and just yeah, just because I'm helping you doesn't mean you're also helping me. Like we're all helping each other in different ways.
Exactly. Okay. Awesome. It was great talking to you, Diana, and I'll see you. I'll see you Thursday, and again next Tuesday on the flip side.
Sounds good. Yes, nice to see you too, Sandy. Bye everyone.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.